In just a few short months, this initiative with key UK and other world-leading partners has made tremendous progress. The G-PST is playing a critical role in identifying and undertaking key research to decarbonise power systems globally, together with championing system operators and research institutions around the world. And the UK National Grid and Finton, their CEO, who just introduced this session, are leaders within the consortium and are collaborating with many institutions. Imperial College in London is another key leader, and they're advancing critical activities to scale up green workforce in the power sector, and leaders on the Women in Power System Transformation activities, which was referenced, and that's funded by US Agency for International Development. And as world leaders in technology innovation and advancing renewable energy markets, the UK sees G-PST and its mandate as critical in uniting the very best of business, research, academia, so that we can together fully decarbonise grids. Tackling climate change requires international cooperation, and if we want to successfully achieve cost-efficient grids decarbonisation that works for everyone, just simply we need to work together. And so today, the UK government is also launching the Green Grids Initiative, One Sun, One World, One Grid. This is a leading global coalition bringing together international partners to ensure that clean, efficient power is the most economical, accessible and reliable option for all countries to meet their power needs by 2030. And the UK is absolutely delighted to be able to forge a link between these two important and complementary initiatives. In this way, the Green Grids Initiative and G-PST will work together not only to identify and fill knowledge gaps, but to ensure this knowledge is translated into practice. And as the newcomer, as I said earlier, I'm personally really excited about both of these initiatives and how they can work together, and the UK looks forward to continued fruitful collaboration on the G-PST as we continue to address our collective urgent climate challenges. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from the panellists now and the rest of the session, so I hope you enjoy it too. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Lee. Now I'm very happy to introduce Cynthia Rose-Lee, who is CFO of PLN, who's going to talk to us around some of the work around promoting women in leadership in power system transformation, work that we're launching today with the United States Agency for International Development, as Lee had talked about. So with that, I'm going to hand you over to Cynthia.
Thank you, Vincent. Good day, everyone. My name is Cynthia Rose-Lee. I'm the CFO of PLN, the largest electric power utility in Indonesia. And PLN is pleased to be a partner of the G-PST and is very excited to be launching and engaging with some new work through the G-PST focus on women in power system transformation in partnership and with the funding from the US Agency for International Development. Although women make up half of the workforce potential worldwide, they are typically underrepresented in the power sector roles, such as utility management, planning, policy making, and engineering. So this work is focused on building more women leaders within the power sectors to address our urgent climate crisis, while also supporting women's economic empowerment. So we have many opportunities that we are scaling up in these coming months. So today we are pleased to announce women-focused internship and fellowships at G-PST core team and FSO institution beginning in 2022, and development of a university-level course package that will include inspiring stories from women leaders in the power sector, gender diversity training courses, and pioneering technical courses on key topics. So these materials will be broadly and freely disseminated to universities around the world. So again, we are pleased to be a partner in the launching of this work, and we look forward to supporting gender diverse power system transformations. So we would like now to share with you all a short video highlighting women leaders in the power sector to further launch this work.
What you need in engineering career is to be courageous, to be curious. This is a unique opportunity you to do something in your life which will change the life for future generations.
I think it's undergone a tremendous change from the time when I was back in school. I think we had our standard set of engineering classes, and power engineers profession at the time was kind of stale and boring. Professional engineers today are having to keep track of all these new developing technologies, understand how capability of these technologies are changing over time, how to model those technologies in engineering studies.
What are the skills of the future is exactly how we're going to manage the data and do the modeling, how we're going to use the things with digitalization, how we're going to make the energy use for normal people easier. Maybe energy will be used like subscription to Netflix.
It's important to learn more about programming. So before it was only for seasoned engineers, but I think that computing engineers, but now this is important for all the kind of jobs that how to program.
The classical engineering disciplines of mechanical engineering, chemical, electrical are all still required, crucially civil as well. But it's how do you merge them and marry them up with more data science, with machine learning, with commercial skills, with communication skills, so that we can meaningfully engage customers, meaningfully engage communities, and what this all means for them.
When you study engineering, then you have the right structure, the right framework, you have a logical thinking, and also build the analytical capability. Taking an engineering course, especially probably if you are having a passion in the power sector, that would be very, very good. But that's not enough. You really need to enhance your skills, to also keep on learning, adding more and more knowledge in digital, knowledge in finance, in business.
Friends and family will probably never understand what the job actually entails, but it's fun, challenging, ever-evolving field to be working in. This profession is also very meaningful and purposeful since these days people come to rely on electricity in all facets of their lives.
I'd say get involved. The next decade of decarbonisation brings major change. Net zero, which is around air quality, and tackling climate change is one of the biggest challenges we face as society. And you can play an extremely positive and meaningful part in achieving that vision.
Engineering is a profession for the future, and I would encourage you to pursue it.
I'm now going to hand you over to Mark Foley. Mark is the CEO of EirGrid in Ireland, and Mark's going to talk about some of the really inspiring work that they're doing at EirGrid to transform Ireland's power system and make it much more renewable and sustainable. Mark, I'll hand the floor to you.
A lot of people in this room are engineers. I'm an engineer, and a lot of the conversation tends to be around engineering, but actually the real conversation should be about leadership. And as I thought about what I was going to say today, just 5 slides, so I won't kill you with PowerPoint, I thought of 3 people. I thought of a young lady who's only 18 years of age and changed the whole discourse of her generation and made heavyweight politicians really uncomfortable. I thought about a 95-year-old man who spent his life trying to educate, and I think he's finally achieved his goal because the skeptics are few and very far between. And I thought of a man who has passed away, but the greatest leader of the last 100 years, in my view, whose self-sacrifice and courage changed a whole country's future and brought democracy to South Africa. So I'm going to talk to you about three things. I'm going to talk to you about Ireland's story. I'm going to talk to you about why it's relevant to G-PST. And then I'm going to ask, maybe, of some of you in the audience, how you can help us. Next slide, please. Just a reminder, and sorry to be negative, but we do need the wake-up call. I stole this from McKinsey's, didn't put it on the slide. My apologies if there's anybody in the audience. Atmospheric carbon dioxide bubbled along between 280 and 300 parts per million for nearly 1 million years. And look at where it's going now. It was 412 at the last record, and it's heading onto another planet. So let's talk about electricity, because electricity is our future in terms of our economy, as a well-being, in terms of our social lives, but electricity is at the front line in terms of the battle against carbon. Next slide, please. So let's talk about Ireland. Small country. I hope everybody of you in the audience has heard of Ireland. Northwestern periphery of Europe. Small country, 5 million people, massively punch above our weight. And I want you to think about two things. An open economy where some of the biggest companies in the world are located, but a microcosm for the challenge we have on a global level. And why are we talking about the Irish experience today? Because we can learn what has been done and what has been achieved in Ireland, and it is genuinely transplantable right across the globe in terms of the battle we have against climate change. And I want to focus on four thoughts or four ideas. One is, what was the philosophy of approach in Ireland that has got us to what I call half time for the Americans here in the football game? What have we achieved? Where are we going? And what is the relevance of the Irish experience in an international context? So let's go to the philosophy. And the philosophy sits in two domains. The leadership domain. Without political leadership and without leadership from captains of industry, the Irish success story would never have happened. So politicians, and much as they get criticised, over 15 years ago, set an ambition for 40% renewables on the Irish power system by 2020. They did it because they believed it was necessary, helped a bit by European directives, which did set a sort of a higher order theme. But there was a political will and passion within Ireland back in 2008 when policy was enunciated to say, we're going for this. And guess what? The engineers thought they were mad. The scientists thought they were mad. People thought it was going to be too expensive. People thought the technology wouldn't work. And this was all a load of nonsense. The other critical leadership dimension was an ecosystem that grew up in Ireland. 20 years ago, people took a bet on wind farms, long before there was a policy in place, and proved the technology would actually work. And that ecosystem built slowly and surely, and it was a combination of both public and private enterprise and some of the best scientific brains, both in Ireland and people who came to work with us in Ireland. And the proof point is, and the facts are, at the end of 2020, Ireland achieved 43% of all energy from renewable sources, predominantly onshore wind, a small bit of solar and a small bit of hydro, but generally speaking, it was an onshore wind phenomenon that completely transformed a power system. The other part of the equation was not just the ecosystem of developers. It was this man here, who deserves all the credit, Mr. Sly, who led in the Air Grid organisation, Fintan was my predecessor, an attack on the laws of physics and said, we can actually make the power system work with very high levels of renewables, despite the skeptics and indeed a section of the engineering community who said, you can't do that, physics won't allow it. Fintan led the effort to say, no, we're taking on the laws of physics, we're going to find solutions, and we're going to make it happen. So at half time in the ball game, Ireland's at 43%. And our government, in a new round, I think, of visionary leadership, both at a national and indeed a global level, has set a target of 70% RESI by 2030 and is about to increase that to 80%. That means you've got to be able to operate at 100%. Now, last January and February, the Irish power system was pretty close to 70% most of the time. So the leadership has been provided by the politicians. The ecosystem, one of the best in the world in terms of onshore wind in Ireland, is ready to go. And as we embrace new technologies, onshore wind, of which offshore wind, which the UK is a massive leader. We'll transplant that. We'll take solar, and we'll take other technologies. And our job is to make sure that grid can operate at 100% by 2030. Next slide, please. Which brings us to G-PST. What is this thing about? Fintan introduced it, but it's about some of the leaders in the world saying, turn the clock back 36 months, and if somebody said it's going to be a global pandemic, you'd say it isn't going to happen. And if then you said it happened, how would we fight it? We've seen a level of collaboration in the pharmaceutical scientific community that is beyond anything the world has ever seen. We can bring that exact same psychology of approach and philosophy into the attack against climate change. G-PST is the start of that. Nobody's self-serving. Nobody's going to make money out of it. It's about combining intellectual property, a passion to deliver the result, and to share it. So the countries don't have to face 20 years of getting to 40%. They can do it in 10 years. Maybe they can do it in 5 years in some other parts of the world. If they can leverage the know-how, the intellectual property, which we're committed to, ourselves, the 6 TSOs, and a broad range of research institutions who have come on board and said, yes, we will go open source and we will share all our learnings, all our technology, and give it to others in the battle against climate change. And maybe when COVID hopefully finally passes, and we're still, I know, battling with the tail end of it, the conversation will be about combining the world's capital and intellectual property resources to kill this thing and to win the battle, because it's a really tough battle. What's my ask, or what's our ask as a group? Next slide, please, last slide. Very simple. Just imagine this is possible. We didn't think the COVID thing would happen. We didn't think the global response would happen, and the globe has delivered. We can do exactly the same in the fight against climate change, and we can deliver power systems that are operating at 100% renewables. That is achievable. Get behind the concept. If you're influential in terms of funding, I'm not here looking for $1 billion or anything of that nature, but get behind the advocacy, get into the conversation, and then where you do have research budgets, etc., support what we're doing. Because we're not going to make anything out of this other than our objective is to deliver a better world for the future. I'm 60 years of age, 3 sons, I have 2 grandchildren. Every day I come to work, I ask myself, am I making a difference? That's what I want to do for the next number of years. And G-PST is providing a world-class collaborative platform that this world hasn't seen before, except the COVID thing. And COVID, I think, is providing the inspiration for that. Thank you very much.
Super. Thanks, Mark. I promise you truly inspirational speakers on our panel, and I think Mark has certainly delivered and set the bar. It's my pleasure now to introduce our next speaker, who is Elliot Manzer, who is the CEO of CalISO. And Elliot is going to be joining us virtually. So if I can hand it over to Elliot on screen.
Thank you. All right. The state of California has been working hard to reduce greenhouse gas emissions for quite some time. In 2018, the state elevated its ambitious goals with updated legislation that called for California to have all of its retail electricity sales carbon-free by 2045. For a state of 40 million people and the 5th largest economy in the world, this is a tremendous opportunity and challenge, which is one of the reasons I'm so interested and supportive of the vital work the G-PST Consortium is doing. California has been working hard to meet its policy goals and was able to meet its interim 2020 target of 33% of its electricity from renewables 2 years early. In fact, for a brief moment on April 24th, 2021, 94.5% of electricity on the California ISO grid was from renewables. That broke the earlier record of 92.5% set just a month earlier. These were glimpses into the future of very high renewable energy penetration. Overall, in 2020, California produced about 33% of its electricity from renewables, 37% from natural gas, 12.2% from large hydro, and 9.3% from nuclear. Our installed renewable mix as of October 1st, 2021 broke down as follows: about 60% solar, about 30% wind, 5.56% geothermal, 4.7% small hydro, and 3.2% biofuels. We're also adding lithium-ion battery storage capacity at unprecedented levels. During the summer of 2020, we had about 250 megawatts of battery storage on our grid. As of October 1st, 2021, we had 1,915 megawatts of storage, and we're on track to have 3,000 megawatts by the end of this year. We're excited to be part of the global energy storage revolution. We're also preparing to integrate significant quantities of additional clean energy resources over the next several years, with as much as 15,000 megawatts by 2026 and over 40,000 megawatts of new clean resources by 2032. The majority of this new generation is based on solar, wind, and storage technologies. As we take on this next phase of rapid renewable energy integration, we need to develop additional transmission capacity to deliver this power to consumers. We also need to coordinate market operations with our many partners across the Western United States who are also striving to achieve ambitious energy policies in a reliable and affordable fashion. And as we transition to the clean grid of the future, we must develop the important technology improvements that make sure a grid designed for a different era is modernized to accommodate all the renewable energy and storage that's coming online. Fortunately, the G-PST was formed to identify and solve the most pressing technology challenges confronting the world's system operators. The G-PST is invaluable in helping to build the tools, systems, education, and implementation practices needed to support the future electric grid and make sure we have the workforce to manage it. At the CAISO, we're excited to help define the research agenda that will speed the transition to a carbon-free power system where reliability is a given. If we could move to the next slide, please. Thank you. As we're seeing in California, wind, solar, and batteries are the leading new clean energy resources being added to electricity grids around the world. These new resources are based on inverter technology and not the traditional rotating machines that have provided key reliability services to the grid. The rapid expansion of inverter-based resources creates a set of new reliability challenges. These include securing adequate inertia, stable voltage, system protection, black start capability, and the ability to ride through disturbances. Solving these challenges will require advances in technology, tools, operating practices, and training. When we began our collaboration last year with the other founding system operators involved in the G-PST, it was immediately clear that we shared common concerns about the challenges created by an ever-increasing quantity of inverter-based resources. As we refined our research agenda and goals, one of the first opportunities that came our way was to support the work of the Unify Consortium. The Unify Consortium brings together an impressive array of research institutions, universities, manufacturers, utilities, and grid operators with the primary goal of designing the clean, reliable power grid of the future. The vision of the Unify Consortium is to achieve future power systems with any mix of machine and inverter-based resources at any scale that are affordable, secure, reliable, clean, and resilient by using grid-forming and grid-following inverters. And their fundamental goal is to enable any level of inverter-based resources and synchronous machines to work together. Control of inverter-based resources provides the opportunity to solve these operational challenges, and the G-PST group was more than happy to support the Unify Consortium in its successful bid to receive a U.S. Department of Energy award of $25 million. If we could advance to the next slide, please. There are several specific research questions that Unify and G-PST will help answer to support the California Independent System Operator and other system operators in managing large quantities of inverter-based resources. How can we ensure inverter-based resources can safely interact with each other and synchronous machines as the grid evolves? What capabilities will inverter-based resources need to ensure clean, reliable, and affordable power? What services will future high IBR systems need? How can these be met with grid-forming inverter-based resources? And how will tools and models need to evolve to accurately monitor and predict high IBR grid behavior? We are excited to further engage with the Unify Consortium to shape and leverage this research and to help disseminate it to other system operators around the world in the years ahead. And we look forward to the many more activities that can come from the forward-looking and comprehensive approach being taken by the G-PST Consortium to drive industry innovation. In the coming years, we will continue to work closely with the other founding system operators to identify specific, tangible research questions, to openly share strategies, expectations, and operational practices and data, and to strengthen the relationships with other countries as we transfer technology and develop new standards for the clean grids of the future. This is exciting and important work, and the California Independent System Operator is pleased to be part of the G-PST Consortium and to support the critical efforts of the global community assembled at the COP26 conference in Glasgow. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you today, and with that, I will pass it back to Fintan. Thanks again.
So now, our next speaker is Cynthia, who spoke to you earlier around the leadership initiative we were launching to promote women in leadership positions in the global power system transformation. Cynthia is now going to talk to us about the collaboration that's underway to upgrade the control center tools within PLN. So with that, I'm going to hand you over to Cynthia for the second time. Cynthia.
Thanks again, Fintan. Yeah, can I have my slide, please? So I'd like to share this time the interesting collaborations with G-PST that we have been doing for a few months already. But before that, let me also give an overview of the context of PLN and the plan that we have around carbon neutrality by 2060. So PLN is the state-owned electricity provider in Indonesia, tasked to provide reliable and affordable electricity for Indonesian archipelago for nearly 280 million people. Our customers currently is about 81.6 million people, and by 2030, we expect that the demand would grow around 50%. So then at the same time, also we are now under the transitions towards the carbon neutrality by 2060. And, around this time, as Indonesia also pledging for 29% conditional and unconditional emissions reductions by 2030, so PLN also along the way with the government policy, we have committed to this energy transition as well. So we have announced the roadmap to do the carbon neutral by 2060, and we are amongst the first 6 Asian electricity players to commit to net zero aspirations. And the whole roadmap basically consists of that we are having no commitment anymore, no new coal plants awarded after 2022. Then also we are aspiring to have 23% renewables mix by 2025, exiting coal-based generations gradually by retiring earlier several coal power plants starting 2030. 35, 45, and by 2056, we expect that we have no coal-based generations anymore. And of course, with that, all of that, we expect to contribute more than 155 million tons CO2 reductions by the year 2030. So that's probably the challenge that we have, and there are several initiatives that we are doing to double the renewable capacity at more than twice as our current capacity, and specifically in solar and wind, that will be more than 10 times of current capacity. So with that, with those plans, of course, our system operators are at the center of clean energy transitions. As Indonesia enhance its clean energy portfolio, PLN system operators and engineers will be responsible for effectively managing the changing electricity generation mix with a rapid increase in variable renewables resources. So this is, of course, must be balanced against quickly changing power demand and customer needs. And we know that the path ahead is full of difficult technical challenges. So as such, we are pleased to be one of the earliest system operators to be partnered with the G-PST, recognizing the G-PST as an important platform and resource to guide our efforts to evolve the way we operate our grid system in the face of rapid technological changes. So with that, we are very, very thankful to the help from G-PST, and this is very, very beneficial for us.
Well, thank you, Fintan. I actually didn't hear any of your introduction at all, so I'm just going to assume that you said something really nice about me. As you can see, I'm joining you here from Australia, so let me first acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I'm on, the Wurundjeri people, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. So it is a real pleasure to join you virtually to share how the energy transition is unfolding at pace in Australia. It's shaped by the unique characteristics of Australia's power system and how we as Australia's independent system operator are managing the transition in collaboration with industry and governments and benefiting from association with people like the G-PST. Next slide, please. So look, it's helpful to provide a bit of context on Australia's power system. I can't see it, but I'm presuming that the slide with a map up. And Australia's largest grid is shown there. It's the National Electricity Market, or the NEM, with around 60 gigawatts of installed capacity. It's one of the longest continuous electricity networks in the world. It spans from far north Queensland through the main population centres of Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, and under the Bass Strait down to Tasmania. It's very long and stringy, with around 40,000 kilometres of transmission line in total. And the states that you see there are often very loosely interconnected. The NEM is home to about 23 million people, quite a small population when you consider similar geographies like Europe, Asia, or North America, as you can see from the diagrams on the screen. And for comparison, the same geographic area in the US would be home to about 150 million people spread across 20 states, from New England in the north through to Florida and Louisiana in the south. And this has some pretty obvious implications for the cost of infrastructure, but it also has technical consequences for being able to operate the grid securely, which I'll come back to in a moment. But in a world where the lowest cost electrons come from the sunshine and the wind, the NEM's geographic diversity also provides some great opportunities. We go to the next slide, which shows a chart with energy on it. Thank you. So like our partners in the G-PST, the way Australians generate and consume energy is transforming at a record pace. And although you might know that Australia's generation fleet is still predominantly coal-fired, the fleet is being transformed rapidly by low-cost and low-carbon renewable energy. What you see on the screen there is not modelling, it's not a projection, and it's not hypothetical. That is the generation profile from South Australia last Sunday. And it's a dramatic picture of how the energy transition is unfolding at pace in Australia. Nearly 1 in every 3 homes in Australia has rooftop solar, totaling a quarter of our generation capacity. And during the day, power from these rooftop solar systems is displacing traditional power from thermal generators and even wind, as you can see there. On this day in South Australia, rooftop solar was able to meet a staggering 87% of underlying demand in the middle of the day. And that's not entirely unusual. When you include wind and grid scale solar, power from renewable sources was able to meet 100% of the state's needs for over 6 hours. And Australia continues to install renewables at a record pace. We're installing renewables on a per capita basis at the fastest rate in the world, 10 times the world average and double the next fastest country, Germany. And we're not slowing down. With 14 gigawatts of rooftop solar installed today, we expect another 9 gigawatts installed in the next 4 years. And the pipeline of connection projects for large-scale renewables is twice the capacity of the current electricity market, including a staggering 23 gigawatts of battery storage projects. And we don't have nuclear power. Our gas fleet is remarkably small at just 10% of our generation mix. And the implication of all of this is that Australia is at the cutting edge of the energy transition, and our relationships with other leading system operators through the G-PST will be a critical enabler for how we navigate this. Next slide, please. This chart is affectionately known as the splatter diagram. Each dot represents a 30-minute block of time throughout the year. And the horizontal axis is really the important one here. And it shows the proportion of renewable energy in that 30-minute window. In 2018, the peak was 38% from renewables. This year, the peak is over 60%. And because we're installing renewables so fast, our forecasts show that there will be times when renewable energy is able to supply 100% of Australia's electricity needs by 2025. And that these occasions will then become more and more frequent from 2025 onwards. So earlier this year, I set us a goal at AEMO to engineer grids that are capable of running at 100% instantaneous penetration of renewable energy by 2025. And that sounds like a pretty formidable task, and I'll be honest, I don't yet know how we're going to get there. But with the support of our partners, including the G-PST Consortium, I am confident that we can. And parts of Australia can be a bellwether for the global energy transition as we all strive to engineer grids capable of operating at ultra-high levels of renewable energy. Tasmania is connected to the mainland by a non-synchronous cable, much like Ireland is to the UK or the UK is to Europe. And with over a gigawatt of demand, Tasmania recently operated at over 91% from non-synchronous generation. And that is truly world leading. And we're learning from these experiences and we're sharing with our partners. Next slide, please. After the launch of the G-PST last year, AEMO and our Australian research partner, the CSIRO, have been collaborating on a body of work that will be essential for solving some of these major challenges for the Australian energy transition. The G-PST has prioritised 6 important research topics shown here, and we've added 3 more which are particularly relevant for us in Australia. They'll also have wider applications, particularly for countries with high uptakes of distributed energy resources like rooftop solar. And I've got to say, I'm really excited about the forward work plan. We'll be developing an operations technology roadmap for our control rooms that can help us operate a system with greater visibility and fidelity to help us operate a grid with high levels of inverter-based resources. We're actually quite well progressed in building a digital twin simulator that enables ultra-high speed analysis of the grid and ability to test the strength and the stability of different configurations in near real time. And I hope that this can be a template tool for other system operators that can pick this up and choose from. There are also some other very practical things in the plan, like working with local universities to bench test inverters to build a better understanding of the performance of distributed energy resources and the impact on the broader power system. And that work will take household inverters that connect solar and batteries to the grid and put them through their paces in a lab to test a range of their performance capabilities. That work will be relevant not just for us, but for system operators around the world as we all grapple with more and more inverter-based renewables. Next slide, please. And that is a short whistle-stop tour of how the energy transition is unfolding in Australia and how we're working in collaboration with partners like the G-PST to create sustainable, reliable, affordable, and decarbonised energy systems for the future. So back to you, Fintan.
Super, thanks very much, Daniel. It's great to see Daniel's commitment to to 100% renewable system operating in 2025, something that we're also committed to here in the UK. And it's great to see the work that's going on around the world on that. So thank you very much, Daniel. So our next presentation is by Anne-Catherine Martin, who is from 50Hertz. And she chairs our Research Advisory Council, and she's going to talk a little bit around what are the next frontier of challenges that the G-PST is going to grapple with as it seeks to push and accelerate that agenda towards decarbonisation. So if I can hand you over to Anne-Catherine Martin now, please.
Thank you, Fintan. And thank you also for your kind introduction. And I'm very impressed also by the other speakers that already have been here in this session. So starting from my position at 50Hertz, so I'm responsible for the operational planning, and quite soon I will also be responsible for the real-time operation at 50Hertz, which is a TSO in Germany, which also had a 60% of renewables in last year. The spirit that also drives me and also my team is to ensure extraordinary high level of reliability of the energy supply. But at the same time, and this was also what Daniel was talking about, to include as much renewables as possible, up to 100%. So in the beginning of this transition towards a net zero system, it was sufficient to just squeeze and optimize the system and the processes that we already have. But this is no longer suitable. So as we already saw in the other presentations, so a net zero system needs disruptive approaches. They will be a key for the success of the energy transition. And it's not only the disruptive approaches regarding tools or methods or the control room requirements that we already heard about, but earlier we also heard about the equipment in the system that needs to be disruptive, meaning we will have more and more inverters connected to the system with a decreasing amount of conventional power plants. And so the Unify consortium that we heard in the beginning is also addressing a very, very important topic regarding inverters and the grid building performance of those equipment. So they do not only mimic the old system that was in the past, but we even make use by those new approaches. We make use of the capability of those equipment, which is even more than the conventional power plants gave us. So one more point I would like to make is, and this is very important to notice, is that in general, there will be no this single solution that makes the energy transition going, but we need to have multiple approaches, multiple ways of going for a common solution. And it's always a set of multiple ones. We had those grid forming inverters already mentioned. We have already been mentioned by the previous speakers of AI-based solvers and so on, but it's only 2 out of a whole bunch of solutions we will need. So G-PST already identified what is needed. So we do not only need solutions that work properly in simulations, but we also, and that's the key, we also need fast application at system operators, meaning the tools and also the processes. But moreover, we also need an improved workforce, and this was what Cynthia was talking in the very beginning of this session, which includes also leaders, but which is of course diverse. So me as a system operator or at responsible of system operation at 50 Hertz, I need different points of view. I need different approaches to get to a solution. And this also means that I need a diverse team in order to get there. So I don't only need diverse teams to overcome the challenges that we have at 50 Hertz as a TSO, but we need it as a whole community, as a community of 100% renewables. And this is also what G-PST is going for. And how do we do it at G-PST and especially the Research Advisory Committee, where we have webinars, where we discuss, where we inspire each other, where we can evolve ideas and solutions, and in the end, even make them happen. So we have had a lot of webinars this year. We are planning a bunch of webinars next year as well. We have the research agenda webinar in order to discuss all the research questions that we are going for. We have coordination calls with institutions like SIGRE. We have also IEEE in the boat. There will also be a workshop. I mentioned already artificial intelligence. There will also be a workshop on how artificial intelligence can make the climate change, how artificial intelligence can make an important point for our work against the climate change. So there's a lot of stuff ongoing and plenty of work to do. And I'm looking very, very forward as being part of G-PST here. Thank you.
Super, thank you very much. I mean, it's great to hear some of those areas that where the research is now starting to move into, such like artificial intelligence, AI, and the benefits that can potentially deliver to accelerating this transition. So that was the majority of our panel. We now just have some closing remarks. So first up, we're very honored and privileged to have Jonathan Pershing, who's the US Deputy Special Presidential Envoy on Climate, come up and provide some reflections and thoughts on G-PST and what he's heard. Jonathan, I'll pass it over to you.
So thank you very much, Fintan. You know, one of the things about coming to sessions like this is to think about the contrast between the negotiations that are happening next door and some of the really operational details that we're required to walk through to solve the problem. We have people like me who spend our lives thinking about what's the overarching objective. How do we think about where we are trying to go? We've got increased clarity on that. We are now in a position where we understand that the change that we are seeking is to keep global temperatures from rising more than about 1.5 degrees and certainly well below 2, because even at those lowered levels, we see real impacts. That's very nice. But at the end of the day, we have to translate that into action. And in some ways, that's what this group is seeking to do. We've moved and we are clear that the structure is very heavily dependent on what we do in the energy sector. I had the privilege of working at the US Department of Energy in the policy office for a number of years, and I can tell you the United States is deeply immersed in this problem. It's a problem, though, that is not just ours. It's a problem that it spans the world. It's a problem that has to bring in all countries, not just the advanced developed countries, but all nations. We understand very clearly that we are seeking to move to really 100% carbon-free power. And we understand that the market has already made quite clear choices that renewables will be a central piece of that puzzle. In fact, what we know is that even in this last year, even during a moment where COVID was driving the global conversation, investment in renewables continued to climb and in fact reached its highest levels ever. That's a function of both price, which has declined precipitously, but also an increased understanding of our capacity to manage a variable supply in a grid which was designed for other purposes. The United States is no stranger to those other purposes, nor are our colleagues here in the UK, who, if anything, could be said to have pioneered the coal-based infrastructure. But all of us are in a position to plan for that transition. And this consortium explicitly is designed to help with that transition. This is a group, and we heard in a series of presentations in the panel, we heard concrete examples for how that can occur. We heard specific changes that each country is endeavoring to make. We heard ways that cooperation is advancing the agenda. So what I'd like to do is thank you all, thank the groups who've worked on this, and what I'd like really much to do is to introduce our own Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, who I think will be able to give us some sense of some of the transitions that she is focused on. And it's really a great honor and a pleasure both to have had myself some prior history at DOE, but to know how much she has advanced this agenda for all of us while she's been here and what she's looking forward to contributing going forward. I turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much. Am I good? You can hear me? This weird situation. All right. Well, it is. I'm sorry that I missed the substance, and I'm only swooping in at the very end, but I'm still going to talk to you, if that's all right. It's a pleasure to be here. I know that the Global Power Systems Transformation Consortium has made a huge amount of progress since April, rumor has it, and impact, of course, showing that to be true. As many of you know, the thinking behind G-PST is simple, that we know that the path to net zero starts with the nation's power sector, every nation's power sector, and with demand for power rising globally, we have got to crack the code on making sure we do this right. We are in a race to add as much clean energy as possible. I was just on the plenary panel, and they were talking about how many thousands of gigawatts of clean that we have got to add, which is just a huge amount of work for the grid and for expanding the grid and making it resilient. So the good news, of course, is just that as clean energy capacity is growing, in fact, what was it, 45% growth in 2020, and that was in the face of a global pandemic. So this very focused effort that all of these nations are bringing to bear means that will only accelerate. Obviously, we've got a lot of work to do to get to 100% clean power, and every country is facing similar issues along the way, whether it's grid complexity, different units of government talking to one another, being able to upload grid onto the big system, the integration of it, the standardization, all of that is what you are working on. I know the Department of Energy and the Department of State obviously joined with Secretary Kwarteng of the UK and several system operator CEOs to form this consortium, and I know it's a first of its kind initiative, and I know we're just starting, and I know we'll keep you together to be able to move forward, because we need so much work needs to be done. And I know that you've also notched some of these impressive accomplishments. So launching state-of-the-art research on grid forming inverters, that's great, that's going to accelerate. Helping Indonesia's grid operator prepare for the massive variable renewable energy integration. In fact, Indonesia's Minister of Energy was here last night talking about the unbelievable amount and diverse sets of inputs that can be added. And so all of that complexity, thank you for working on that. We've all undertaken this exciting work with USAID to support gender diversity in the sector. We got more work to do on that. And of course, that's just the start. So today, I'm really thrilled to share the stage with some of the G-PST champions who have contributed to those successes and who have and will, I'm sure, continue to offer their thoughts on what we've accomplished so far. We are together obviously raising confidence that the power grids who are running on 100% clean, non-carbon emitting energy are not only possible, but that they're desirable, and that it really offers a more resilient and sustainable energy mix. And from my point of view, I'm totally obsessed about the job creation opportunities in clean energy of all forms. Our consortium partners here stand ready to support, obviously, all of these countries who are seeking to decarbonize their power grids in every corner of the world. We want to bring together the world's smartest people to be able to do that. We want to help countries everywhere overcome these very large challenges from what they face at home. And we want to demonstrate that creating jobs in clean energy is really good for their economies as well. And we want to learn. We certainly, in America, we want to learn from you all. We want to learn from other countries. We are certainly not the first to this dance, but we also want to be sure we're on the dance floor with you. So that's what you all are all about. G-PST is all about. I want to thank you so much for joining today. I hope to have many more like-minded folks in the years ahead working on making sure we've got resilient, communicative grids that really help power not just countries, but our entire world. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks
All right.
very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, Secretary Granholm. And we're absolutely delighted to be sharing a dance floor with you as we go forward. So thank you very much for those remarks. This brings us to the conclusion of our event here today. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Hopefully you saw some of the work that's going on in G-PST and some of the really tangible actions that we're taking forward. Please do reach out to us in the consortium. Please do join with us. This is not just about talking here today. this is not about blah, blah, blah. This is about do. And we want to get on and decarbonize the system at a dramatically accelerated pace. So thank you all so very much for joining. Thank you for everyone who joined online, and thank you for persevering with us through some of the technical difficulties. Enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.